Glyn McKay is going to be our next speaker. She was the executive director in our Eagle Forum DC office for about 5 years. And then in 2016, she moved over to the Club for Growth. She is a graduate of Baylor University, and she has a very exciting new project for Eagle Forum, which she's going to explain and get all of you involved in. Please welcome Glyn.
Thank you. I thought she was going to say something about my very exciting children, who you all have been very gracious to tolerate this weekend. One of them actually poked me in the eye last night on accident. He's almost 1, and so it's a very blurry world for me today, so bear with me if I falter. Anyway, okay, is everybody awake? All right. There's a video from PragerU. I hope this part of the discussion kind of helps frame what we've been talking about, but there's a video from PragerU. It features Jeff Myers of Summit Ministries, and he's talking about the art of framing. So framing theory suggests that how something is presented influences the choices people make when they're processing that information. One of the best examples of framing can be found by watching the mainstream media. They're trying to influence the perception of the news in order to set an agenda or to influence how the listener thinks about an issue. Leftists are masters at the art of framing. Take socialism. We've been talking about this. We've seen the economic and moral failure of the socialist model in the former Soviet Union, Cuba, Venezuela, and polls, as we've talked about, show 7 in 10 millennials will likely vote for a socialist. Why? Because socialism has been very cleverly framed. It makes people equal. Those who have more than their fair share should give it back. Those born without privilege finally have an opportunity. What's wrong with equality and leveling the playing field? If you're opposed to socialism, clearly you're selfish. Take abortion. How has the left framed abortion? Anti-choice. That's right. It's her body, it's her choice. It's just a clump of cells. Can't even hardly say that, but it's between a woman and her doctor. If you're opposed, then you're anti-woman or against basic health care. Any other ideas on issues that the left has framed? That's right. I actually had written, opposed to the idea of man-made climate change, you're a science denier. If you believe marriage is between a man and a woman, you're clearly homophobic. If you defend the rule of law and believe we should have borders, then you're xenophobic. So we've talked this weekend about why young people are susceptible to these lies, the education system, the media, etc. But we want to give you a frame of understanding that will hopefully help you engage with younger generations in a way that will trample the lies of the left. My mom did raise me right, and I know we're not supposed to talk about age, but how many of you in the audience are members of the silent generation? That means you were born before 1946. Somebody proud in the back. Lots of proud people, great. How many of you are baby boomers? 46 to 64. Okay, boomer. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, boomer. Okay. Jid, I don't know if I can make this joke, but I get called the boomer of the group a lot of times because sometimes technology, anyway. Any Gen Xers between 65 and 76? And that's supposed to be Nancy? What's the response there? Or Karen. Okay, Karen, yeah. You know, these millennials and all these jokes. Gen Z, or the iGen, meaning you were born after 1996. Yeah, a little reluctant, but okay. And then the butt of all the generational jokes, how many millennials? Very proud, loud and proud, always. So the title of this talk is How to Engage and Educate All Generations, but I want to focus on millennials for a moment, and here's why. There's market research that shows that Gen X and baby boomers are starting to communicate, shop, and buy like millennials. So if we want to attract and keep other generations, but we miss or lose millennials, we increase the risk, of losing Gen X and baby boomers as well. Millennials are a really large group. I think we've already mentioned this. They're in college, or they're married like me, have a mortgage, and are raising children. But what's most important to note is that we're breaking into 2 different subsections. One is reaching all of the traditional markers of adulthood, and the other is still living in their parents' basement and playing video games. The funny thing is, by the time millennials reach 30, they've kind of self-selected into either group and no longer relate to each other. So there's no other group more offended by those that are failing to launch than those of us who are trying to adult. So we can kind of lay off the millennial jokes, I guess. Several opinion pieces over the last year have asserted that 2020 will be the political year of the millennial. The eldest group of millennials is eligible to run for the presidency, Tulsi Gabbard, Mayor Pete. And most Democrats are pandering to millennials with the promises of student loan forgiveness and health care for all. There's also a horrifying piece from Time magazine last week entitled, "How Millennial Leaders Will Change America." And they're talking about millennials like AOC, not like the women on this panel. We are the largest living generation, the largest age group in the workforce, and will soon outnumber baby boomers among American voters. Can I get some water? I'm sorry. Millennials have come of age, though, during a time of rampant divorce and fatherless homes, terrorist attacks, school shootings, digital media, and a self-focused world. We are the generation of the participation trophy. Yet, a lot of us are really ambitious. I'm sorry. Thank you. We faced a unique set of economic challenges. Many were entering the job market during the financial crisis, the recession, and the slow recovery. If they weren't entering the job market, they were going back to college, which is why we have this student loan crisis that we do. While almost half of us hold bachelor's degrees, we've missed the traditional adult milestones when it comes to wealth, investments, homeownership, marriage, and children as compared to other generations at this stage in our life. Birth rates are at the lowest level in 32 years, and our peers say things like, if I can't afford a house, I can't afford children. If we had 0 student loans, then we'd definitely be married. So, for our state chapters, or those of you with political groups or social media, millennials are primarily visual learners. We're attached to our gadgets, we have never lived without computers, and we're conditioned to make purchases while looking at a screen. We don't read a lot of text, which is ironic because our preferred method of communication is texting, then email, then social media, and lastly, phone and in person. And this is why it's very important to focus on how and what we're communicating on social media. Millennials don't remember the Reagan-era economic boom, the Gulf War, or the impeachment of Bill Clinton, and worst of all, many were never given a religious foundation. These numbers were astounding to me. It's statistics comparing millennials to boomers in response to the same questions. So according to an AEI poll, 17% of millennials said they weren't raised in any particular religion, as compared to 5% of baby boomers. Fewer than 1 in 3 millennials say they attended weekly religious services with their family when they were young, compared to about half of baby boomers. A majority of millennials agree that religious people are generally less tolerant of others, compared to only 37% of baby boomers. This is of the utmost importance when we're trying to engage millennials. We have to prove, as human beings, we are perfectly capable of accepting someone without approving of their choices or their lifestyle. Unfortunately, the past decade has been marked by a rise in tribalism fueled by social media and personal technology, and that's what's making people more connected, yet more isolated. Millennials are highly suspect of established institutions like mass media, religious institutions, and the federal government, and research has shown that experiences in early adulthood have the greatest impact on lifelong political leanings. How many of you have ever said something along the lines of, well, young people lean left, but then they become more conservative with age as they buy homes, build wealth, and have families? I know you all have said that because I've said it too. But there is data, and this is what's scary, there's data that tells a different story. Researchers have found that popular presidents tend to attract young people to their party, while unpopular presidents repel them. Meaning, if you're disenchanted by a Republican president as a teenager, you're disproportionately more likely to vote for Democrats well into your adult life. This came from a Pew study done in 2012 that found those who turned 18 during the Nixon years were more likely to vote for Obama, while those who turned 18 a decade later, during the Ronald Reagan years, tended to vote for Mitt Romney in the 2012 presidential race. So what can we do? We have to engage with younger generations to avoid that trend. My husband and I are in church ministry. He's a missions pastor, and our statement at church is to inhale and exhale the gospel and make disciples that do the same. In the same vein, I don't want to relegate the gospel of Jesus to our political philosophy, but in that same vein, you've inhaled a lot of information this weekend, and now it's time to go out. Just find one person. Somebody already mentioned just texting one millennial in your life or someone that you know is not engaged, and exhale some of the information to them. Make them your mentee. Empower them to find someone else to mentor in the same way. That's how we multiply. We just start with one person. Then engage the frames of the left. Know your response to the big ideas or the claims and ask questions. This is how I admittedly became more conservative or more solidified in my conservatism in the midst of questioning the values that had been passed on to me by my parents. Ask questions. Do you think that's the whole story? Why do you think that? Have you ever experienced that? Can I share with you what I think? The worst case scenario is this is just a really good practice in civil discourse, which we're sorely missing. But the goal should be to just respectfully exchange ideas. This generation is looking for authenticity, and we yearn for that connectedness. We want to make a difference. We are politically savvy, and we want to be challenged. Most of us consider our grandparents to be our heroes, and we've even been marked as the first generation that readily accepts older leadership. We like networking, we desire mentorship, we're looking for meaningful work and stability, and we understand the importance of great mentors. Eagle Forum certainly recognizes that need, and we're working really hard to engage with younger generations. Kirsten Hasler is the executive director of Eagle Forum in Washington, and she's going to tell you about a really exciting new project that we're launching today.
Well, thank you, Glyn, for that. I just want to start and really thank Glyn for her hard work. Without her initiative, I wouldn't be here right now telling you about the new project that we're launching today, and it's a podcast called Engage with Eagle Forum. So for the past almost 4 months, Glyn, Tabitha, and myself have been working behind the scenes on this. A podcast is a millennials' version of talk radio. While Gen X and baby boomers have Rush, we have the New York Times Daily, The Verdict with Ted Cruz, and Crime Junkie. These are some of today's trending podcasts, mostly on news, but also ranging from faith, motherhood, hobbies, books, comedy, and health. 34 million women are monthly podcast listeners. The average podcast listener is between the ages of 18 to 54, and 71% of Gen Z and millennials currently listen to podcasts. Almost everyone I know has listened to a podcast. You see, like Glyn mentioned, we don't like the news. Most of us don't even have cable. I find my news on Twitter, the internet, eagleforum.org. Yes, and social media. We need someone else to filter out the, quote, noise and tell us succinctly what is actually going on. Engage with Eagle Forum is going to do just that. Our vision is to be a reflection of the Eagle Forum model in encouraging women, both young and old, in her vital role in shaping society. By helping explain the issues and why she should care about them, we will equip women with the information they need to feel confident in engaging in society. Today, we are launching Engage and plan to release a new 20-minute episode every Monday, and we need your help in sharing this podcast to your network. So right now, everyone has a card on their table, Engaged with Eagle Forum. And it has a little QR code, this barcode here. So what I want you to do is open up your phone camera and hover your camera over the little code. Yes, you can also go to engagewitheagleforum.com if you don't have a smartphone. But once you hover your phone camera over that little code, a little banner ribbon will pop up on the top of your camera, and you just click that, and it brings you straight to our website, engagewitheagleforum.com. And there you'll find all of our episodes, information, and just updates on what we're going to be doing. So what we need you to do is share this with your network. Besides that, we'd love you to subscribe to our podcast. So once you click on an episode, there will be an option on the page that says subscribe. And that means that every single time a new episode is uploaded, it will automatically go onto your phone, so you won't miss an episode. We also need you to rate us. So give us a 5-star rating and leave a comment. If you have questions, go find Mary Ann, because she is a podcast expert. But lastly, really, we just hope that this will take off. It will be another avenue for a new generation of Eagles to come to Eagle Forum, and they can use the resources that we are providing them each and every day. So now I'm going to hand the mic back over to Glyn. And if you have any questions at the end, feel free to ask those.
Yes, we would love to help you. Yeah, she's great. We'd love to help you subscribe, rate, review. You know, everything's about analytics these days. Apple really cares how many people are listening, how long they listen, if they're subscribing, if they're rating, if they're reviewing us. And if you do all of those things, it boosts us, and we can be featured in Apple's new and noteworthy. So that's our goal. But as I was studying about podcasts and who's listening and who's not, it became really clear that we're on the cusp of something really new. Research shows that about 40% of Americans, 40%, 54 and younger, listen to podcasts monthly. And this is indicative of a widely adopted consumer technology. It's what they saw with smartphones, what we saw with Facebook, etc. So we're ahead of the curve, and we really want to ride this wave, and we'd love to invite you to invest in this project. We have to pay an editor. We need to pay for advertising on social media and such. So if you want to invest in this project, we'd be really grateful. If we all do a little, it will add up to a lot. So thank you. Subscribe, rate, review, and if you'd like to invest, we would welcome that.